Welcome to the Meria Heller Show, on the net since 2000 and still going strong. If you feel like you're not getting the real news, if you feel like you're not connected spiritually, you have found your home. Meria covers a wide range of topics as only a snarky New Yorker can. Straight up, no chaser. No censorship, no corporate sponsors, thus true freedom of speech. Your subscription gives you unlimited access as a member of the smartest audience on earth. Relax and enjoy the education. Now here's Meria.
Good morning, world. Meria here, alive and kicking. Welcome to Hell and High Water with myself and my guest, Chuck Ochelli. If you're not familiar with Chuck's work, get over to Ochelli.com. There's a live link here. One of less than 5 people I actually recommend anyone to listen to. So who knows where today's show will go. And tonight I will be on Chuck's show. And just a reminder, tomorrow I'll be on Richie Allen's show. So you're going to get sick of me this week, but here I am. Good morning, Chuck.
Oh, good morning, Mom. And as I look forward to talking to you right now, I look forward to talking to you later. And it's going to be good to hear you on with Richie, too. Again, Richie's one of the very few guys who I also endorse at this time.
Right.
And I think he's on your list as well, isn't he?
Oh, of course. And, I saw Jack Blood had made a post yesterday that he's thinking of coming back to radio. So I had said to him, I'm happy to have you back as a co-host anytime. He says, but you got a great replacement for me. And I know he was talking about you. So I said, yeah, but the more the merrier. So we'll see what ends up, if Jack actually does it. But, he was smart in a way to take several years off because this kind of work really can burn you out.
Well, that's one of the things that it is doing. Now, as far as Jack goes, again, I say that if Jack wants to return, I will assist him in facilitating that and make his life easier if he wants to work with me. And all he's got to do is contact me. He knows who I am.
Exactly.
So I would be more than happy to assist that because we need, Meria, do we need voices?
I know. And they try to silence us, and the saddest way they try to do that is to stop our money flow. And you can see that happening, by them censoring us, whether it's YouTube, whether it's Twitter, whether it's Facebook. So that's the saddest part. And that's why I'm so grateful to everyone that supports your show, to everyone that supports my show, Richie's show, Richard Grove's work, and Donald Jeffrey's work. There you go. There's my whole list. So it's interesting times we live in, but, my mother used to always say only the strong survive. But I thought I'd kick off the show with some good news this morning that I got. Okay, let's try something different. Let's start with some good news. I noticed last night that my daughter tried to FaceTime me, but it was late, so I didn't even answer it. And then as I got on my computer this morning, she immediately FaceTimed me, and she's super excited, okay? And I said, what's up, And she said, have you seen the movie Game Changers with Arnold Schwarzenegger? And I hadn't seen it because I had seen the preview. I didn't know when the movie was being released. But I guess it's on Netflix now, which I intend to watch tonight. And this is the movie where Arnold is a big part of it, and I think Jackie Chan is in it too, where he talks about how sorry he is that he didn't learn about a vegan diet and bodybuilding all those years ago. And my daughter was so impressed by the facts and figures that they showed, including blood flow to a man's penis, depending on what they ate that day, that it seemed to have finally clicked with her. And you have to understand, Chuck, I've been vegan for 20 years. I've done everything in my power to convince my kids to do the same. I mean, my granddaughter is because she has no choice, because she lives with me. But for me, it was I said, why this? You've watched Forks Over Knives. You've watched all these other movies. What made the difference? And she said it was the presentation of facts and figures. So for me, as her mother, you have to get this. I'm going to be 70 in December. And I just went for all my annual, checkups, my eyes, my teeth, my gums, my body, etc. And everything is super perfect. Okay, I still am on 0 medications. And I still weight train, 6 days a week I'm in the gym. So, I've tried by example to get through to my kids, but sometimes they just have to see the right movie, read the right book. I don't know what it takes, but it's that eureka moment for different people. So it's nice to see her touting her healthy 70-year-old mother as proof of what she's now, I guess this is her new soapbox, of what she's now promoting. So, for me, that was very happy news. And then I saw somebody had commented on her post, well, I got rid of meat and chicken, but, I still eat eggs and fish. And I posted, no one should be eating anything coming out of the ocean, not even fish oil, no supplements, anything. I don't know how many more reports I have to do about the entire Pacific Ocean is radioactive. Everything coming out of it is radioactive. And then you see all these reports of all the drugs that people use ending up inside the fish. And people don't realize whether you're pouring your extra pills down the toilet or you're just urinating. Whatever you're urinating, there's like 26 pharmaceutical drugs tested in all the fish. So people have to, listen, the world is polluted to the max. Humans have destroyed their own web of life. And you have to learn to zig or zag because truthfully today, you're playing Russian roulette every time you put your fork in your mouth.
See, now this is a problem for me because I got to be honest with you. It's one of those, I could never be completely vegan, but I've attempted to remove a lot of the meat from my diet, right? One of the best things about this used to be that I could eat fish.
Right.
Up until, about 10 years ago, I guess,
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't aware of exactly what was going on in the oceans, and I thought because of all of the natural components in fish, that these were...
Well, yeah, it used to be brain food. Used to call it brain food.
Well, yeah, and look, every time I studied any of it, the oils are great.
Right.
If you can believe it or not, if you can chew down the cartilage of certain fish, it's actually good for you. Mm-hmm. Every which way you go, fish is great, but not when all it does is live in a contaminated environment that, makes it radioactive, makes it full of plastic, which is another weird thing.
Sad, very
now
sad.
You have fish that have plastic in their bellies and everything else.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what to do with that, to be honest with you.
I remember back in the day, when you wanted to go on a diet, you just started eating fish and vegetables. It was a healthy thing. And believe me, nobody cooked fish better than I did. All right. I mean, if anybody in my family was a fisherman, and there were a few, they'd bring the fish to me to cook because my mother couldn't cook fish to save her life. But you have to pay attention to what's going on. The skies are polluted. The ocean is polluted. I don't know if you saw the pictures. I think we talked a little bit about it the last time we spoke, about that boiling methane lake in Siberia. Scientists are saying they've never seen anything like it. It's just burping up methane. So, you have to, if you don't know what's going on in the news, even though you and I are sick of the news and don't even want to cover it, but if you don't know what's going on in the news, it affects your life. So you do have to pay attention. You know what I mean? It's like people saying, I'm not interested in politics. Well, you may not be interested in politics, but politics is interested in you.
Yeah, one way or another, it will take an interest in you. And that's the other problem here. Now, I'm going to kind of attack this from a strange side, and bear with me, but what is safe to eat any longer, Meria? I mean, let's be real. All right. If we know that they're spraying stuff over our heads still, if we know that the air is contaminated, if we know the water is contaminated, if we know the soil is contaminated, what is it that we can eat? You can't grow anything without it being, poisoned in some way or other. I mean, even if you attempt to grow organic food on your own, you can't control the air. You can't control the water table. You know what I'm saying?
I totally agree, and that's what I tell people. It's almost like survival will depend on who can mutate to the pollution and the poisons out there. So all you can do, and I say this all the time, like you said, I cut out a lot of this and that. You don't have to be perfect, okay? Listen, I'm Italian. Every now and then I'm going to go out for pizza. I'm going to ask for forgiveness for eating the cheese, but it's pizza. So, nobody's perfect. The last perfect person on this planet supposedly had nails. He was nailed to a cross. So you can only do the best you can. I mean, if somebody asks me, and that's what I told my daughter, because I can tell she's now going to be like a born-again vegetarian and torture people. That's not the way to go about it. Do you know what I mean? For me, it's you live by example. For me, what I do for me, I do for me. When I cover it on my show, I hope my listeners benefit. It's not out there to make them feel guilty. I remember years ago when I used to have Ronnie Cummings on my show from Organic Consumers regularly. Some of my listeners would say, this show made me feel guilty. Well, I can't make you feel guilty. That's coming from you. My goal is not to make people feel guilty, but to teach them the healthiest, highest spiritual vibrational diet you can possibly eat. So now let's shift one more time, because we always seem to go this way, Chuck. When you look at the American diet, ever since I was a little girl, the pyramid, the food pyramid, it was all the food that the big agribusinesses wanted to get people hooked on. Meat, milk, eggs, vegetables, fruits, always on the bottom of the pile. But what people don't realize, and, Will Tuttle, who was a genius, and I have many shows with Will Tuttle in the archives, one of the healthiest vegetarians I've ever met, but his spiritual energy just knocked me out. When I saw him in person, I almost fainted. And the truth of the matter is he was the only vegan author. That's how I ended up putting him on my show. And I think we co-hosted for about 2 years. That's how much information this guy had. But he was the only guy with the guts to say that what you eat affects your spirituality, your spiritual connection, and that the American diet is designed to shut off your pineal gland. Now, your pineal gland is what other people call your third eye.
Right.
And that is how you connect to your dreams, to your higher self, your spiritual life. And I was so blown away. I had seen an article written by him, and I contacted him, and then it was on. I mean, he was on my show regularly. And his book is called The World Peace Diet, one of the best books out there. And again, I don't remember what we called our segment on the show, but I'm sure if people put in Will Tuttle on the top of the page, they'll be able to get all those shows, because I don't think I've eliminated them cleaning my server. But if you think about it, to convince an entire population that eating dead animals was somehow good for them, making your body, one vegan had said that his stomach was not a graveyard for dead animals. The truth of the matter is the density of animal flesh keeps you from connecting to the spiritual side of you. And I think Dr. Jean Shinola Bolen also talked about that in her books, and I still have some of her shows in the archives because she's genius. There's a lot of information out there, but for somebody like you, I hear the same thing from so many people. All I'm going to tell you, Chuck, is do the best you can. Nobody's going to do it 100%. Okay, you don't have to. Do it the best you can. If you can afford organic, vegetables, get the organics. Okay, they are polluted because of what you said, the air and the water, but they're still better. Okay, so you can only do the best you can do. Okay, I don't want anybody beating themselves up. I mean, listen, we're all in this together. I just want to put out good, clean information.
No, I hear you. The other odd thing that transitioned, because yes, when you were younger and I was, a toddler, they certainly pushed a lot of the big, the big farm, the corporatized farming, what do we call that exactly? The commercialized kill industry.
Yeah, agribusiness.
The big agricultural, but it's not really agricultural. It's the commercialized kill industry, and that was profitable. But you know what the transition became at one point, again, during my growth, my ascendancy into adulthood, was this very covert introduction of way too much corn,
Exactly.
way too much grain. And this is not healthy either. Now, how did they do this? They subsidize these corn farmers and everything else, so we know about that, blah, blah, okay. But at the end of the day, how much of this corn is now in everything. The corn syrups,
Right.
the artificial crap. All of this, by the way, what Meria was just talking about and what I'm talking about, they not only, keep the pineal gland from opening, but they also calcify it. That's an odd process that I think a lot of people don't understand. It's like not even in the sort of, semi-closed state that it might be in, but also let's produce a coating over top of it that sort of, keeps it sealed.
Right.
Which is another thing that's gone on. And again, it's kind of weird to think about it being an accident, isn't it, Meria?
Of course not. And think about it, the weight and density of the horror of the energy. You're also eating energy. So you're eating the energy of animals that have been raped, drugged, tortured, slaughtered, and that's going to affect you. And I hear from a lot of people, even one of my listeners overseas, he's always down, he's always depressed, he can't get his shit together. And people won't make the connection between what goes in also affects your mind. Okay. So, and I go back to, back and forth on so many things here, but everybody wants to raise their vibration. But if you're eating the vibration of death, how do you think you're going to feel? Do the best you can. All right. If you're addicted to eggs, one girl had posted, she's got an egg addiction, obviously. I said, well, there's plenty of egg substitutes that you can buy. For me, I never liked eggs, so I don't really care. But let me finish on your corn thing, okay? Chuck, too bad you never got to meet my father, okay? My father was the smartest man I have ever met in my life, to date. Now, you know the level of men that I have interviewed on my show, okay? Mm-hmm. Everybody from Gandhi to Gore Vidal, smart, what I consider some of the smartest men ever. They don't compete with my father. And I'll tell you a funny corn story. When we were kids, I don't know, corn was probably 8 ears for a quarter or something. Okay.
Right.
And I remember when my mother bought corn to make corn for dinner for us, like corn on the cob, and my father came in. Okay. My father looked at that corn and tossed it. Okay. He says, they use corn to fatten pigs. You're not feeding this crap to my children.
Yeah.
Okay,
well,
so
he was right.
Right. So, he knew so many things about natural health that, I wonder, how did he know all of this? Okay, we're talking about the 1950s. Okay, it wasn't like you had all this information, movies, and everything else out there. But, there were certain things that were not allowed in our house. Margarine was never allowed. When it first came out, I remember when margarine first hit the supermarket stores, okay? That's how old I am. And my mother was all thrilled because you could get a pack of 4 sticks of margarine for 30 cents, okay?
Well, even today, Meria, as we speak, right, I got to tell you that there is $6 pounds of butter versus, in a store today, and I know you don't like animal products, but listen, I use butter. 6 pounds of butter, $6 for a pound of butter versus $2 for a pound of, or even $1 if you go to the right store for a pound of margarine.
Right, then what is margarine? It's oil, okay? You might as well put petroleum down your throat. Well, when my father came home and my mother was so thrilled to show him off this brand new product, that was another thing that went flying, okay, went flying in the air. Then, we wanted to be American, okay? Remember, I'm only a second-generation American. And, my grandmother lived upstairs from us. So everything in our house was Italian. Italian food, Italian music, Italian wine. But we were white little American girls. We wanted to be like our American friends. And what were American kids bringing to school for lunch? Peanut butter and jelly. So my mother goes out and buys peanut butter. Another thing my father chucks out the window. All right, and my kids aren't eating this fattening crap. So, there were things we just couldn't do. Thanksgiving, being Italian, we didn't have turkey. We had lasagna. You know what I mean? So as we wanted the American diet just to be like our friends, my father was totally against it.
Well, here's a piece of knowledge, and I'm only a second generation born here as well. Here's a piece of knowledge that the Italians that arrived here had, and they just had it. And no offense to your father, I mean, I'm sure he was brilliant, but it seems to me like all of the immigrants from Italy and Sicily seem to know this, because I remember being told by older guys, in my family that they were amazed to see that Americans ate food that was meant for farm animals.
Right. Exactly.
I didn't hear about the corn for pigs directly, but it was just all across the board. All of this stuff was why are they eating these cereals?
Right.
Why are they eating this, oats?
Right.
What are you doing? This stuff is to be fed to animals to fatten them up. Not the pigs necessarily. I don't know which animals they were talking about, but in general, that's what they would say about it.
Right.
And they were amazed that Americans from such a country where there should be a million choices
right.
of the greatest things on the planet, that this is what people chose to put in their bodies.
Right. Well, you see study after study. What do they say is the most healthy diet to eat? A Mediterranean diet. What's the best oil to eat? Olive oil. When they, you look at it, I've been to Italy several times. You're hard pressed to find fat people in Italy.
Well, yeah, this is true. And here's the sad thing about that, too, is that, again, because of the Sicilian in my background, I know this, a lot of that stuff is fish. Unfortunately, right?
Right.
And when the ocean wasn't fully contaminated, as we said before, if you were eating fish 30 years ago, you were doing a pretty good thing for your body.
Right.
I mean, the oils in the fish, the various, different elements that the fish took in, the salt that was natural to the fish itself that you didn't need to add yourself, right? All these things were positive elements.
Right.
I know you could talk about the ethical concerns with fish, and I've heard the debates about this because they say that fish don't have the same nervous structures, and they're not terrified, horrified animals when they're being harvested from the ocean.
Have you seen a fish on a hook?
No, I've seen a fish on a hook, but they tell me that somehow the nervous system of a fish is different. I'm not here to argue that, but what I'm saying is that even if you were eating that back then, though, it was something that was healthy.
Listen, I ate fish that no longer exists because they've been overfished and made extinct. Back in the day, and we're not talking that long ago, maybe 35 years ago, there was nothing better than a bluefish. Well, there's no more bluefish. Now it's tilapia. Well, what's tilapia? It's the garbage fish of the ocean. It's like a garbage truck that eats all the other garbage. So, you don't have to tell me how beautiful food used to be. And I kind of feel bad that there's so many things that people can't eat anymore. And it's going to continue on that way. And now you look at this Trump administration reducing the regulations on food processing, reduce the limit of how many chickens can be processed per 30 seconds, having the butchers basically regulate themselves. Your food was already super filthy. How much more dangerous is it going to get with loosening up these regulations now?
Yeah, I listen. I do still eat chicken on occasion, and I got to tell you that it is not even remotely the same substance it was 30 years ago.
Right.
At this point, it doesn't taste like it, doesn't look like it, doesn't feel like it. It is a whole other something.
Well, because it's been recreated. The DNA's been changed. They've added, fattening agents, antibiotics, things that make them plumper. There's some birds that can't even fly because they've made, especially turkeys, that can't even fly anymore because they've been altered so many ways. It's not like, listen, when I was a little girl, just to show you the difference between your age group and mine, I lived in Brooklyn, and everything you wanted to buy was in a separate store. So when my mother wanted or my grandmother wanted to make chicken, they would send us down to the poultry farm, which was 2 blocks away. It was inside a building, on a concrete floor, and there were a million chickens just running around loose. And what you would do is just pick out a chicken by eye. And they would just, chop the chicken's head off, let it bleed, and they'd give it to you in a bag with all the feathers and everything still on it. And I remember you take it home, and I remember watching my grandmother pluck that chicken. I mean, it was a lot of work to make a chicken dinner. It wasn't going into Safeway, picking up a package of chicken, under cellophane and taking it home. And I remember when I had Dr. Michael Grieger, he's with Physicians for Responsible Medicine on my show. And at the time, I was still a meat eater, okay? And he said, if you take that packaged chicken home from the store and dip it in your toilet 20 times before you cook it, it won't be any filthier than when you took it home from the store. After that show with him, every time I looked at a chicken, I wanted to throw up, okay? So for me, it was a gradual convince me, listen, it took 50 years for me to do that, okay? So it got to a point where I said, okay, I'll just adopt the adage that a lot of vegans use. They say, I just won't eat anything that had a mother or eyes. So
well, that covers a lot. That covers a lot.
Right, but I don't know how we got off on this tangent today. But I guess this was something that is worth talking about because, listen, the powers that be want us all dumbed down. They want us sick because it's big business. Okay. I posted a meme yesterday. In other countries, what is a vial of what's that stuff that people have to take when they have diabetes?
Oh, insulin.
Insulin. There are many countries where insulin is given away free. Other countries where it's $7 for, the EpiPen. Here in America, it's $700. Do you honestly, remember Kevin Trudeau, who's still rotting in jail? Okay, I had Kevin on right before he ended up going to jail on his book where he exposed, and I know it was why he's in jail. It wasn't tax evasion or Trump being in jail. It was because of what he exposed. And he said the food industry, the diet industry, the medical industry are all owned by the same people. So once they make you sick, they make money off you. Once they make you fat, they make money off you with their diet centers. And it's been that way to keep people down, sick, tuned out, crippling your ability to remember that we're spiritual beings having a human experience, not the other way around.
Well, right. Look, it's practical strategy. It's twofold, really. Very simple. I know there's a lot of complex issues, but it comes down to two things. If they can keep you dependent and they can keep you weak, then you are so much less likely to ever have a chance at doing something in a revolutionary fashion.
Exactly.
Because you don't have the strength, and at the end of the day, even if you do muster the strength to fight the system, you still wind up dependent on them because they're the only ones that offer you the alleged solution to the problem which they've given you. Which, again, is about the diet being polluted. It's about the intellectual pool being polluted. It's about the water system being polluted. It's about the air being polluted. All of it comes together in one very simple tactic. If they're weak and they are dependent upon something that they believe they need from us, then they cannot fight us. That's the strategy. I mean, I don't know how else to simplify it. Do you?
No, I think you said it really well. But I'm telling you, when I look at the world, I think about that old Charlton Heston movie, Soylent Green. And, there are some countries that are experimenting with human flesh burgers right now. So how long before they turn us into cannibals like they did with cows? Okay, they feed cows parts of dead cows, even though cows are vegan by nature. They're herbivores. So they've turned cows into cannibals. And if people understand Creutzfeldt-Jacobs disease, 1 pound of burger meat could come from 100 different cows. So again, that's more, Russian roulette. Years ago I had, what was his name? Howard Wyman, I think. He was the rancher that was on Oprah's show many years ago, and he had become a vegan, and he got on Oprah's show, and he was talking about the meat industry and how bad it was, and then Oprah said she was going to switch to a vegan diet, and then Oprah got sued, for covering that on her show. Well, several months later, I managed to have him on my show, and he said to me at the end of the show, "You're a way better interviewer than Oprah."
Well, look, we already knew that, Meria.
But you know what? I had read his book, and I still remember the name of the book. It was Mad Cowboy. And he was great. And I said, well, that's the difference. I don't have Oprah's staff. I don't have a cheat sheet in front of me. I actually read your book, And I pride myself on that. So, listen, it's everybody's choice. I'm not telling anybody listening to the show what to do. I'm just telling you what I do, what I've learned through doing the show for 20 years. It has been astounding. Listen, I'm learning along with everybody else.
Well, I have an odd question that just popped into my mind, and I don't know why it did, but this Impossible Whopper.
Yeah, stay away.
These, allegedly
Yes.
vegetarian-friendly meat substitutes that
Yeah.
you see coming out in the fast food industry.
Right.
What do you think of those?
First of all, if you go to the grocery store, because all of a sudden they're in the frozen food case, they are 2 of those burgers compared to 4 vegan burgers for the same price. So you're getting half. That's number 1. Number 2, most vegans don't want the taste of meat, okay? They don't want something that looks bloody on their plate, okay? That's not why they became vegans. They're animal rights people, a lot of them. Second, I find that they're all genetically modified. So my answer is no. There's, so many good products, so many good brands now. The tastiest ones are put out by Morningstar. There's no reason to have to do that. And remember, even if you go, say, to McDonald's, or I think McDonald's is now serving one of those Impossible Burgers.
Oh,
Remember
really?
that
Okay.
when you go to a fast food place, even when you order a veggie burger, they're cooking it on the same grill they cook meat on. So, these are things you have to think about. And listen, a lot of you see every now and then, you'll see a story where a vegan sues McDonald's or a fast food place. Because they've got meat. McDonald's actually has some form of meat in their French fries, and they were sued years ago for that. So you've really got to do the homework, but, most people are going to say they don't want to do that. Well, then it's easy. Buy a pack of 4 veggie burgers, go home and cook them yourself. It's cheaper,
Right.
it's healthier, and your pots and pans are clean. You know what I mean? Listen, I went a little nuts this weekend, which I tend to do, but I've been a little extra Italian this weekend. And my son came up to visit, and he brought with him, because he's weight training now, and he brought with him some frozen fish. I don't know what it was, shrimp or whatever. And when he went to put it in my freezer, I lost my mind, okay? And I said to him, how dare you bring that shit in my house? I says, you brought like a curse upon my house. I went crazy, right? I says, I told you I don't want any dead animal flesh in my house. I says, and where do you think you're cooking that? I says, you're not cooking that on any of my pots and pans. That shit's not touching my dishes. I mean, I went nuts, okay? But my son is used to me going nuts. But you know what? He respected me, and he didn't cook it. He left it in there and took it home with him when he left. I says, you're here, you're going to eat what I'm cooking. Okay, that shit's not happening in my house. That's how crazy I've gone over to the other side. Okay.
Well, but look, there's ethical considerations here, and I again, I'm not going to pretend like I'm on the same page as you, but I am I'm moving toward it. I got to tell you, as time goes on,
that
because
makes me
it's
happy. Listen, it's taking 20 years for me to hear this from my daughter. Okay, 20 years. It took me years too, even with all the experts that I interviewed. I kept making the same excuses we all made, okay? But then one day, I think it was when I was flying to Tahiti, I was reading John Robbins' last book. I don't know, Diet for America or Diet Revolution. I don't remember what it was. And I looked at my partner and I said to him, that's it, okay? He's like, what do you mean that's it? I said, we're done. I said, I can't make excuses for myself anymore. I said, from now on, that's it. I'm going vegetarian. And that's what I did because, listen, it's going to, for everybody, it might be a specific book. It might be a specific movie. Whatever it is, when it's right for you, the right thing's going to show up. I can't tell people to do things that I'm not willing to do myself. That's not who I am. I like to lead by example. Chuck, we need to take a short break. So welcome to the Chuck and Meria Vegetarian episode of Hell and High Water. And we'll be right back. Hi, this is Meria. I don't often get to talk directly to the listeners here on the Gary Knoll Network, but I felt like doing that today. I know a lot of you really enjoy my show, but you might not know that I do 4 shows a week over at my website, meria.net. So if you're loving the show you get to hear on Sunday, come on over to my site and subscribe because I've got hundreds of hours of great shows on pretty much every topic in the universe. And that again is meria.net, meria.net. And now we can get back to this excellent show. Thanks. Okay, welcome back to Hell and High Water. Even though it may not sound like it, but Chuck and I are pretty disgusted talking about the news, and I'm sure we'll talk about the news on Chuck's show tonight. I know I will with Richie Allen tomorrow. Chuck, you said something interesting during the break, and somebody actually Facebooked me this morning and said no matter what he does, he can't come out of this depression. It just seems like he's always depressed. Then I saw another post by people saying, and this one was on Instagram, a girl had put up a meme. I guess she has depression. And she says, why is it that they don't talk about the fact that when you have depression, you also have short-term memory loss? So for me, I like surfing all the different social medias just to see the pulse. For me, it's just the pulse of, what are people concerned with today?
Depression seems to be, and quite honestly, just the concept of depression, not depression by any DSM, okay? Let's just talk about this in general. Seems to be the unspecified headline in a lot of people's lives. I mean, I've taken note of this too across social media where we're talking a lot more about suicide. We're talking a lot more about people feeling quite exhausted by what it is they're observing in the world around them and by their life itself, as if they're overwhelmed. People are seeming to turn what used to be their anger back on themselves. And eventually, look, you're going to run out of boogeymen, and you're going to run out of straw men, and you're going to run out of, well, gee, I can't stand these liberals because they're a cancer on the nation, and gee, I can't stand those conservative Nazis, and you're going to run out of tackling dummies, and eventually, you got to remember that you got to live with yourself. And quite honestly, I think some people, without realizing it, are going through that process, and they're turning their anger, their discomfort, their disquiet, which they have exercised on other people, either by proxy or directly, they're turning it back on themselves, and I'm seeing depression and kind of the hopelessness, the overwhelmed spirit being displayed by a lot of people. And quite frankly, Maria, I got to be honest with you. I've felt it myself lately too. I don't want to discuss it much, to be honest with you, but even lately myself, I question, can I even continue to do what it is I have to do? Not just with the media thing, but with everything. It just seems like there is a depressive malaise, just like Jimmy Carter, who just fell down again recently and broke a pelvic bone this time, told us that there was a malaise over America, right? I think he was right, and I think it has done nothing but increase incrementally over time, and I think it got accelerated ever since, 2015, let's say.
Well, it's interesting because Maria Shriver this morning made a post on Twitter, and she said she started the meme that she posted with, "I am exhausted from this presidency," and then she went on. So we actually have Trump fatigue. It's like a form of PTSD, post-Trump fatigue. But I don't think that's the whole reason, okay? And I'm going to talk to you as if you were one of my children or you were one of my clients, okay? First thing for everybody listening out there who's saying, yeah, I'm depressed too, I have depression. Make sure that what you're saying is truly what you're feeling, because we get the whistle blown every day on us to what we even should be feeling, okay? Which I think is another uptick in people saying they're depressed. Are you depressed or are you sad? There's a difference. Are you sad? Are you disgusted? Are you angry? Don't buy the words that are being put out in front of you by the pharmaceutical industry to get you on their antidepressants, which one of the side effects is depression. Are you really depressed? So you're asking me, and I'm going to tell you. I think that first of all, everybody has to have a life of purpose. The 9 to 5 is not a life of purpose for most people. Working on an assembly line is not a life of purpose. People have to feel good at the end of the day that they accomplished something, whatever that is. Okay, and a lot of people don't even know, what their purpose is. Well, I don't know. What do I want to do? They don't even know that. That's number one. Number two, we're going to go back to diet. A clean diet, clean water, clean air, clean sheets on your bed. All of these things help lift you out of depression. And exercise. I just had this conversation with a guy at the gym yesterday. His wife has the beginnings of Alzheimer's disease. She's as sweet as anything, but when she sits next to me and she starts talking, she repeats the same stories that I've heard 100 times. And sometimes she'll repeat them in the same conversation. However, it's been proven that exercise, weight training exercise, reduces Alzheimer's and stops it dead in its tracks. So when I look, I live in a town where there's a lot of seniors, Chuck. When I look at how many people over 80 are working out in the gym and they have their faculties, you can have a conversation with them. I know that that's part of it. Okay, and like I've told people for 20 years, if you don't want to watch the news, which is so depressing, you don't want to watch the fake debates, all the bullshit, I'm so sick of it myself. You don't have to, because I do it for you. Okay, listen, it's an hour a day. You can handle that. Okay, and I throw in a lot of humor, and people appreciate my humor. So if I can make you laugh while the world is burning, I'm doing my job. Okay, I'm a second-born child, so our position in the family is to be the family clown. And birth position is another interesting thing people should really read about because it's fascinating.
You're an attention breaker is what you are.
That's exactly what I used it for. If my parents started swinging it out, I would try to make them laugh, and it usually worked and diffused the situation. There's a lot of reasons. What are you watching on TV? Is what you're watching terrifying you and giving you fear? Are you getting fearful to drive down a street in your own car because of so many terrible things you're feeding your mind through what you're watching on TV or what kind of crazy books you're reading? Okay, what goes in your mind, you can manifest. Okay, thoughts have wings. So I'm very careful what I watch, what I read, what I'm willing to, participate in. I'm not going to give my power away to all this crap that's out there because that's not what I'm here to do.
No, I hear you, and you're exactly right. And look, if I were to take it personally right now, I would tell you that really what I'm feeling is tired.
Okay.
That's what it's coming down to.
But being tired is different than saying I'm depressed.
Right. No, I know this, and I'm glad you made this point because, you brought up another thing that I think needs to be addressed in the most serious way. Another overused term at this point, believe it or not, is PTSD.
All right.
And I'll tell you why. I got that diagnosis myself when I was a kid. Now, there's unique circumstances by which I got it. But I'm telling you now that a lot of people that are screaming that they have some level of PTSD do not. Okay? They may have suffered some trauma, but they have not gone through that process that is akin to exactly what happens when individuals are in a battlefield. Mm-hmm. There is a difference here. There's a difference in the way that this continues to profoundly affect you. It's not a broken heart, PTSD. It's not the loss of something. It's not just feeling terrible for a while. That is not PTSD, and you have a bad memory of it. That's not PTSD. Uh-huh. And, look, it's always very dicey when you deal with these terms because most of them are invented, manufactured by an industry which is not medicine. I am sorry, but psychiatry and psychology is not medicine. Okay? It is literally just like psychic things. Okay? They are otherworldly. The mind is otherworldly. And the truth is that you cannot ascribe groupings to people so easily.
Right.
I mean, even allopathic medicine, which on occasion has its uses, although it's overused, there are standards by which you can go. The mind is so much more diversified that, quite honestly, I can't even recognize psychology and psychiatry as a science, because in order for something to be scientifically empirical, you must be able to replicate it, okay, and independent from the original observation. And here's the problem. No two individuals are exactly alike, okay? And no two minds are exactly alike. And even twins who share almost all of their DNA and share part of their lives together, they are still not exactly alike.
Right.
Okay? So we need to dispossess ourselves of some of this terminology. But PTSD is a real thing.
Well, yeah, it is.
It really is.
Listen, I mean, when I was a kid, I got hit by a truck when I was 4 and died. Literally just died. Nobody seems to remember how long I was out before I popped up again. But for the longest time, I would say well into, maybe until I was 50 years old. Every time a huge truck drove by me on the highway, I panicked. And I had to actually work with myself to get over that fear, realizing it came from getting hit by a giant truck when I was 4 years old. So to me, that was a reasonable thing and a reasonable trigger. But, I'm not going to say that all psychiatry is bogus. I mean, I believe in talk therapy. A lot of people just need somebody to talk to. And John Bradshaw's work was excellent. But he's a guy who walked the talk. He went through it, so he knew what he was talking about. He knew what he was teaching. But
well, right, don't feel as though I'm saying it's all bogus.
No.
What I'm saying is that the majority of that industry.
Well, because everybody has to label everything. If you put a label on it, you can sell people something. Okay. Right. And this is the way our country is. And now, everybody wants to label their sexuality, their childhood diseases, this and that. But I will say, when you were saying that, I actually went and looked in my own archives. I did a show years ago with a guy who has a PhD in psychiatry. Jeffrey Shaler, his name was. He wrote a book called Addiction is a Choice. He got demonized by the entire psychotherapy field for writing that book. So, of course, I read the book and put him on my show. So if people want to see, is addiction a choice or not, what do you really know about it? That show is June 11th, 2014. There's certain shows I'm never going to take off my archives because I consider them a total education. Right. But, he got like an exorcist. He got exorcised out of the whole business because he was telling the truth. But, they give you an addiction, tell you have an addiction, tell you you're never going to recover and you're always going to need us.
Well, you know what's funny about that, how this ties exactly to everything we've been talking about?
Yeah.
Is that it's funny. I wonder if during that interview, because I haven't heard that one, Meria, I'll be honest with you.
It's a good one. Go listen to it. The book was great. I kept that book. There's certain books I will keep forever. That was one of them.
Oh, I understand I understand the selected bookshelf. Believe me.
Yeah.
But the thing is, when I started to talk to people about this, and I dealt with issues of addiction surrounding me throughout my entire life, I had a temporary issue with it for about 7 years. Outside of the fact that I'm addicted to nicotine. Sorry, I do smoke. But aside from
that's not an addiction; it's a choice.
Well, yeah, I understand.
Everybody's got a vice. Everybody has a vice of choice. You know what I mean? Nobody's perfect. Who wants to be perfect?
I understand, but I'm just saying that's been my thing. But for 7 years, I was hooked on painkillers. That's true. But they were first given to me by a doctor, and, I wasn't thinking at the time that I would have this issue. It really did blindside me. I know that sounds crazy. But here's a fact that I started to research, and that is that a lot of people who have these issues of, quote, addiction, end quote, a lot of it boils down to, ready for this, nutrition. Mm-hmm. I know that sounds crazy, but
to me, it doesn't.
The brain calls out for something.
Of course. Well, look how many people have a sugar addiction. Okay, sugar in your diet is a precursor to alcoholism and cocaine use because they both affect the brain the same way as sugar.
Right. Now, here's the thing. A lot of times when your body is calling out for some nutrition it's lacking, you can wind up susceptible to one of these other addictions because the chemical substance will at least appear to give the brain part of what it wants. Right? And in a lot of cases, they found that creating a proper diet for some people absolutely eliminated the whole problem of addiction. Again, it's not one size fits all.
But this is how we go back to what I said about Kevin Trudeau's book, and that interview is still in the archives. They deliberately give you the food to create the addiction to everything else they sell, so then they can sell you. Listen, medicine doesn't want to cure you. They want you as a lifetime customer.
Right. But this is the thing, though. I know this is kind of a strange way to connect the dots, but remember we were talking about the corn and the corn syrup and all that?
Right.
That stuff does exactly what you just said.
Of course it does.
Which, and tell me something, Maria, if you take a look at the majority, I know you wouldn't shop in the rest of the supermarket per se, but if you were to go ahead and examine and really carefully look at the ingredients in so many things, you will find all of these corn syrups and artificial sugars and all these things that are spread throughout that supermarket in places you wouldn't believe, by the way. You know how we were talking about fish? Well, you know when they freeze and, coat fish with a coating and all that, and it's ready-made, you throw it in your microwave and you eat it, that kind of thing? Half of that coating is made up of this stuff.
Of course. Listen, there's 3 addictive tastes to people. So it's sugar, salt, and fat. So, even when they say, this is sugar-free, well, they up the fat. When they say it's fat-free, they up the sugar. Because otherwise people are not going to buy those products. Because they're not going to taste very well. But you know what? I don't want to sound like I'm doing a promo for my own show today. But Dr. Neil Bernard was on my show quite a few times. I consider him the best doctor in the country. And I've interviewed a lot. His book, Breaking the Food Addiction, again, his shows are still in the archives. When he sent it to me, my show was fairly new at that time. Maybe when I say new, maybe it was 10 years old. Okay.
And new for you.
Right. And he sent me the book, and I said, okay. And I think it was the first book of his that I covered with him. I said, okay, I'm going to try his plan in this book, because if it doesn't work, there's no way I'm putting him on my show. You know what I mean? So he had said, posited that you can reverse your taste buds in 12 weeks and change whatever food you're addicted to. And listen, I was a chocoholic, okay? Confessions of a Chocoholic, starring Meria Heller. I mean, I had huge bags of chocolates everywhere in my freezer, in my fridge.
By the way, chocolate is, again, one of these things that is a short leap away from very, very dangerous substances, actually. It makes you much more susceptible. I know people aren't going to believe this when they hear this, but it actually makes you much more susceptible to cocaine and heroin.
Well, it's a lot of sugar. Well, dark chocolate, which most people don't want to eat, is actually healthy for you because it doesn't have the sugar in it.
That's the dark chocolate, but that's not what mostly people
No,
consume.
they're not. So I'm looking through his book and I'm reading the diet and I'm like, ugh. But it was basically high fiber vegetarian eating. So I'm about 6 weeks in to eating that way. Still trying to see if his plan's going to work, but I figure, all right, I got 6 weeks to go. And my girlfriend invites me to this party. We go to this party, and what's the first thing I see? I mean, a giant chocolate fountain, Chuck. Okay? The chocolate was flowing like it just was pouring out of the hands of God himself. And
this is one of those, there's a bunch of things laying around it to dip into the fountain.
Right. Well, they had strawberries that looked like they were handcrafted from God. Okay.
Oh, okay.
So those were my 2 big things. So she walked away from me. She didn't know the eating plan I was on. But I mean, that thing called to me like it had my name on it. And I walked over to it and I grabbed the biggest strawberry, reddest strawberry I could find. And I mean, I whipped it through that chocolate chalk at least 20 times before I put it in my mouth. Okay. As soon as I put it in my mouth, I had to spit it out. I just spit it out, okay? And I was like, wow, what the hell is this? I didn't make the connection to the fact that I was following that eating plan and maybe it was actually working. But when I tested it for a couple more weeks, it absolutely worked. So I got him on my show. The last show I did with him was by accident because I saw he had a book on curing diabetes. And one of my friends has diabetes. So I bought the book for him, but he refused to read the book, so I took it back. I don't have diabetes. I read the whole book. And I was like, oh God, I have to put him on the show. So I got him back on to talk about curing diabetes. But the bottom line is, even as a lot of my doctors, especially chiropractors, will tell me, you can't talk to people about their diet and making changes in their diet because they go crazy. They get very nasty and very ugly. But I said, how can they not see the connection between the disease they've created in themselves and what they're putting in their mouths or their lifestyle in general? People that never move, they're sedentary all the time. The body needs to move, okay? Back in the day, we didn't have to go to a gym. Your whole life was a workout.
Right.
Now you drive to the gym to get some exercise, which is kind of crazy if you think about it. But there's so many things that we can do if we just get back to, the way our grandparents' lifestyles were. My grandparents didn't have to go to a gym. They were healthy. They ate whatever they wanted to eat because the food they ate was clean. And you walked, everybody walked everywhere because we couldn't afford 15 cents for the bus. All right. So it was, 15 cents for the bus or I can get a lemon ice. I'm going for the lemon ice. I'll walk the 8 miles. You know what I mean? So, that's how it was in Brooklyn. And they had the best gelato in the universe. So it was a deal because you ended up with a nickel left over because an ice was only 10 cents.
There you go.
So, we need to get back to natural living. We got to reconnect to the earth. We got to start taking care of the earth. We've got to get back to real farming. We've got to get back to conscious farming. Bernie Sanders is talking about that. Getting rid of the agri-farms, helping the small farmers, getting back to taking care of the soil. Things that are important. I can't force people to do anything, and I never want to sound like I'm preaching because I was in there just like everybody else. Okay, everybody awakens at their own time. I always tell people that, even on their spiritual journey. No flower opens before it's due. And people have to stop getting down on themselves. Look in the mirror every morning and start your day by looking at yourself, saying out loud, I love you. What can I do to make you happy today? And there's my Sermon on the Mount for today.
Well, and the other thing to remember is, look, some people might listen to this and say, look, they're talking about a lot of really lofty goals, really big changes that, a couple of steps in the right direction gets you a lot closer.
Right.
And a couple of steps more on another day when you're ready to take them will get you a little closer.
Yeah.
And, there is absolutely nothing wrong with taking the journey at the pace at which you can handle it.
Absolutely.
And,
nobody's going to judge you.
So,
right. Nobody's going to judge you. I don't judge anybody. I think that's why my clients like me so much, because I don't judge them. I don't judge anything they share with me. We're all in this together. We're all trying to figure out, think about the fact that we're all these tremendously powerful spiritual beings trapped in these little bodies pretending to be human. It's very difficult. And everybody needs to just pace it out. Do it at your own pace.
Exactly.
Anyway, we're out of time, Chuck, so I guess I'll talk to you later on today. So get over to Ochelli.com and make sure you tune in tonight for more. Who knows what you will be talking about, Chuck.
Exactly. Thanks, Mom.
You're welcome. Chuck Ochelli. I know that our shows have not been centered on politics because he and I are truly blown out, and I want to give people useful information. I cover politics plenty of days a week here. And I hope you all got something useful for yourself out of today's show. So again, thanks for supporting the show, and I'll see you guys next time.
Thank you for listening and supporting the Meria Show. Tell others what you learned today. Knowledge becomes wisdom only when it's shared. Encourage others to subscribe today. www.meria.net. Often imitated, never duplicated. A world of information all in one place. www.meria.net. Always ahead of the curve. Always on your side. Get active or get radioactive. Subscribe today.